We talk a lot about how distracted we have become. What we talk about less is how much we have stopped noticing it.
I didn't realize how much it was changing my own behavior until my partner pointed something out on a walk.
He had noticed I had been reading the news more, that I was being, in his word, influenced. What bothered me wasn't the comment itself. It was realizing he was right, and that I was still picking up my phone anyway.
I wanted to know what this was doing to me, so instead of trying to fix it first, I spent 7 days just watching myself, and some of the things I found was not what I expected. Now, most of us know our attention is being pulled apart. That's not a new idea.
What's harder to see is how quickly the environment can create habits you never had before.
A few months ago, I ran a consistency experiment. I deliberately reduced my screen time. I knew it was a problem.
It did work for about 2 months.
Okay, I gotta go now.
I felt genuinely different. And then the word got loud again.
No.
I've never been someone who followed the news. In fact, I actively tell people not to follow the news. But somehow this one pulled me in. And before I noticed, I found myself constantly checking the news, whether it's on Facebook, on X, or Thread, or Instagram, all the social media apps. I check it first thing in the morning, I check it the last thing before I go to bed.
Maybe because I had booked a trip to Poland. It would be my first time seeing summer there. And suddenly, I didn't know what was going to happen.
And that's what I'm trying to understand. Not whether I could build better habits, but how easily it could be dismantled by something I never even chose to let in. In this audit, for 7 days, I changed nothing.
No intervention, just observation.
I track 4 main things.
When my attention broke, what triggered it, how often I reach for my phone without planning to, and what my emotional state looked like alongside all of this.
Now, one honest thing. This is by no means a controlled study. I am but one person watching myself, so the sample size is exactly 1. Now, self-observation is never neutral, and that's a trade-off of self-experimentation. I know, I'm doing it anyway. Now, this is part 1 of a 2-part experiment video. Part 2 is where I actually try to redesign my environment and see what actually changes. Whether it will, I don't know. It depends on what results I get from this audit. If you want to see what happens, I hope you follow along.
The first thing I noticed was the mornings. Most days, I was checking the news before I've even gone to the bathroom. Not messages, not emails, just the news clip. After a few days, I realized I wasn't really looking for information, I was looking for reassurance. Every morning, I opened the feed hoping nothing had escalated overnight, hoping things had somehow stabilized.
Most mornings they had not, and that feeling of repeated disappointment followed me into the first hour of my work.
The strange part was that nothing in my actual environment had changed. But emotionally, my day had already been calibrated by events happening thousands of miles away.
I thought I was just checking the news, being up to date. But what I was doing was importing someone else's crisis from thousands of miles away into my day. But that wasn't the only pattern I noticed.
The second thing was more uncomfortable. I always thought of my phone as something that interrupted my work.
But once I started paying attention, I realized nothing was actually interrupting me. I reached for it.
Usually right at the moment something in my work became difficult. There was a very small window between that moment of friction and the moment my hand was already moving towards the phone. Sometimes there wasn't even a reason. No notification, no messages I was waiting for. I would just turn on the phone, look at the screen for a few seconds and close it again. I call these the phantom checks. And if I hadn't been writing them down, I probably wouldn't have remembered they happened at all. I'm ashamed to say this, that these happen roughly every 15 to 30 minutes.
I thought my phone was distracting me, but most of the time, I was the one reaching for it the moment my work got difficult, from scripting, writing, to filming.
I don't know, how long does the baby spider come?
The third thing caught me off guard. It happens in a moment when I wasn't really tracking with my notebook.
From my morning run at the Oval to getting my 10k steps in the neighborhood with my partner. We're going for our afternoon walk. And Luca forgot his chapka. That's a cool car.
Some days I got no use for it all.
And petting all the kitties and doggos I come across. Yeah. Hello, girl. Or my weekend date with my partner.
Yeah, so he doesn't have his friend with him. His friend is in Argentina, and it's in the viewpoint of Dr. Shepard, which is kind of witnessing this crime. And I've been reading from the viewpoint and of course of the murderer. These moments where I just didn't have the hands to pick up my phone. What I expected in those moments were boredom or anxiety, but they didn't really show up.
Sometimes it was just quiet. Sometimes I thought about everything from personal finance to are there acorns in Australia? And how to start a chicken farm because I love eggs. My mind seemed to do things on its own in those small gaps. Curiosity, ideas, questions, the kind of thinking I rarely allowed to surface because there weren't enough gaps. At the end of the 7 days, I didn't feel better. I felt more accurate. Stopping trying was the only way I could actually see what was happening.
3 things became pretty clear.
Attention sets the emotional baseline. What you look at the first thing in the morning quietly sets the emotional baseline for the rest of the day. For 2 weeks, I had been starting mine with conflict I couldn't influence. Most distraction is self-initiated.
Most of the time I lost focus weren't because something pulled my attention.
It was because something in the work pushed me away. Difficulty, uncertainty, not knowing what to do next. The phone just happened to be the nearest exit. Attention isn't gone. It's crowded out. The kind of thinking I thought I had lost, the slower, wandering kind, was still happening. Just in the moments I hadn't felt yet.
Which means the problem might not be that our attention and focus disappear. It might just be that something has been occupying those available gaps. There was one day where I barely checked my phone. And it wasn't because I was trying not to, but my work was demanding or interesting enough that my phone just became irrelevant. I left it in the living room. And that tells me it's still possible to get into flow state. That's what 7 days of watching yourself with no plan to fix anything can show you. I want to read out some of the words I use in my notes. Disappointed. Disappointed. I had no idea why I picked up the phone. No idea why I picked up the phone. No idea why I picked up the phone. Just numb. And I think that's the thing. Caring about what's happening in the world and compulsively checking every hourly update on what every politician says are 2 different things. I just hadn't noticed the line had been moved. Have you? In part 2, I'm going to try to move it back. See you next time.